February 1944, northern Burma. A Japanese sapper crawled under a black timber trestle before sunrise, pressed 30 pounds of explosive against the firebox of the last serviceable locomotive on the Nambu spur, and pulled the wire tight with his teeth. At 04:18, the locomotive came apart, not gracefully, not like a machine failing, like a furnace being punched open from the inside. Steel tore into the trees. The boiler lifted, twisted, and slammed back down across the rails. One drive wheel rolled off the embankment, hit the mud, and stood there upright for 3 seconds before it fell over like a coin. In less than 10 seconds, the Japanese had not destroyed a train. They had destroyed a corridor. 18 miles of colonial track now ended in a smoking heap of metal. Beyond that heap were forward units with ammunition for 3 days, quinine for 2, and morphine that had already been counted by the syringe. The monsoon was coming, and once the monsoon arrived, the roads would not be roads anymore. They would be brown rivers pretending to be roads. By every rule the army understood, that explosion should have stopped the Allied push in the valley. It should have turned maps into wishful thinking. It should have left men at the front, waiting for trucks that could not move, mules that were dying, and parachutes that got swallowed by jungle canopy before they ever touched the ground. But 8 miles south of the wreck, in a motor pool that smelled of wet canvas, gasoline, and mildew, a 29-year-old corporal from Altoona, Pennsylvania, was lying under a Dodge weapons carrier with a wrench in one hand and a length of measuring wire in the other. His name was Arthur Blevins. Everyone called him Art, and while officers argued over bridges and tonnage and the exact number of vehicles already lost to the mud, Art Blevins was staring at a truck axle and thinking about railroad wheels. He had no authorization, no blueprint, no permission from anybody who mattered. But he had seen something the map had missed. The jungle had eaten the roads. It had not eaten the rails. To understand why one mechanic's idea mattered, you have to understand what northern Burma did to machines. A truck could leave India clean, painted, and numbered. 2 weeks later, it looked like it had been dredged from a river. The mud did not behave like mud. It behaved like a living thing. It climbed tires. It packed under fenders. It sealed around axles until a 6-wheel drive truck sat on its frame with all 6 wheels spinning in the air like a beetle on its back. Drivers learned not to trust ground that looked firm. The surface could hold your boot and still swallow a loaded truck to the running boards. A recovery vehicle would come in to pull it free. Then the recovery vehicle would sink too. By March, some convoys were moving 6 miles in 9 hours. Some did not move at all. At the forward aid stations, doctors were doing arithmetic nobody should have to do. How many wounded men could receive morphine? How many had to be held down? How many infections could wait? How many could not? The supplies existed. That was the cruelty of it. The ammunition was in depots. The medicine was in crates. The rations were stacked under tarps. They were close enough to smell if you were standing in the right valley. And still, for a man bleeding on the perimeter, they might as well have been on the moon. The army tried the obvious answers first. More trucks. The mud took them. More mules. Disease took them. More airdrops. The jungle canopy took half of those and hung them 100 feet up, visible, useless, swinging above men who needed what was inside. Engineers laid corduroy roads out of felled trees. The logs sank. Men cursed the mud, then cursed the rain, then stopped cursing because cursing used breath. The Japanese understood this better than anyone in Washington. They knew they could not outproduce America. They did not have to. They only had to stop America from delivering what it produced. The Allied way of war was a conveyor belt of steel, fuel, food, and medicine. Break the belt, and the whole machine began to cough. That was why they blew the locomotive. That was why they watched the rail line. That was why they believed the valley had closed again. They were almost right. Art Blevins had grown up 3 blocks from the Altoona rail yards, where locomotives were not romantic. They were work, they were heat and grease and union men shouting over steam. His father had repaired brake gear for the Pennsylvania Railroad. His uncle had lost 2 fingers to a coupler. Art had learned young that a machine did not care what it was called. It cared where the force went. By 13, he could true a warped bicycle rim with a spoke wrench and patience. By 16, he was running errands for a shop that rebuilt pump housings and rail car bearings. By 22, he could hear a bad bearing before the foreman could find it. He was not the loudest man in the motor pool. That mattered. Loud men got heard early. Quiet men got heard only when the thing they built started moving. Art had arrived in the theater as a mechanic and turned into something more valuable. Because Burma turned every mechanic into a thief, a machinist, and a priest. You stole parts from dead trucks. You machined what the supply forms could not provide. Then you prayed the repair would hold long enough to matter. The first time he noticed the rail gauge, it was an accident. He was walking back from a disabled generator when he cut across the old plantation spur. The rails were rusted in places, buried in weeds in others, but the bed beneath them was still firm. Where the road beside it had collapsed into clay soup, the track still sat on stone ballast like a narrow spine through the jungle. Art stopped. He looked at the rails. Then he looked back toward the motor pool. Then he knelt in the rain and stretched his measuring wire from one rail head to the other. 39 inches and change. He walked straight to the nearest Dodge WC-51 weapons carrier and measured the distance from wheel center to wheel center. Too wide, but not impossibly wide. That distinction is where every field invention begins. Not easy, not proper, not in the manual, just not impossible. The Dodge was heavier than a Jeep, strong enough to pull, light enough to modify, and common enough that losing one would not start a war inside the paperwork office. Its tires were useless on the rail, but Art was not thinking about tires anymore. He was thinking about flanges. A steel rail needed a steel wheel with a lip on the inside edge, something to keep the vehicle from walking off the track on a curve. The trucks already had torque. The track already had a bed. The missing piece was a set of wheels the Army did not issue because no procurement officer in Detroit had imagined a weapons carrier pretending to be a locomotive in a Burmese valley. Art wrote his proposal on the back pages of a damp maintenance ledger. He drew 4 crude flanged wheels. He drew spacer collars. He drew a locked steering linkage. He calculated that one converted Dodge, ballasted properly, could pull 2 light flat cars on level track, maybe 3 if the rails were dry, and could do in 40 minutes what a road convoy was failing to do in a day. Then he took the ledger to Staff Sergeant Willis Croy. Croy read the first page. He read the second page. Then he closed the ledger and said, "Blevins, the Army has several problems in this theater. Not enough trains is one. Too many privates trying to invent trains is another." Art said, I'm a corporal, Sergeant. Croy stared at him. Art took the ledger back. A smarter man might have stopped there. Art was not smarter in that way. He waited until the night shift thinned out, then pulled 3 men into the corner of the motor pool. Private Mateo Ruiz, who could weld without turning good steel into lace. Technician 5th grade Hollis Grant, who had worked in a foundry in Indiana. And a radio repairman named Samuels, who owned the cleanest calipers in the battalion and trusted nobody else to touch them. Their foundry was not a foundry. It was an oil drum cut open with a torch, lined with clay, fed with charcoal, and insulted into usefulness. They melted scrap from a cracked axle housing, sections of cut rail, and 2 broken brake drums. The first pour cooled wrong and split down the center. The second came out porous. The third held. Art machined the wheel blanks on a lathe that should have been condemned in peacetime and worshipped in war. He cut the flanges deep enough to bite the rail, bored the centers to accept the Dodge hubs, then built heavy spacer collars to bring the wheels inward over the narrow gauge. The front steering had to be locked. That part bothered Ruiz. "What happens when you come to a curve?" he asked. Art tightened a bolt, did not look up, and said, "The rail steers." Ruiz stared at him. "That is not the answer I wanted. It is the answer the track gives." By the 5th night, they had 4 wheels, 2 spare collars, and 1 weapons carrier that no longer looked like a weapons carrier. It looked shorter somehow, squatter, guilty. Just before dawn, they jacked it up beside the old spur, pulled off the rubber wheels, bolted on the flanged steel ones, packed sandbags over the rear axle, chained 2 lengths of scrap rail across the cargo bed for ballast, and lowered the whole ugly creation onto the track. The Dodge sat there in the rain, absurd and beautiful. A truck with train wheels, a mistake with a clutch. Art climbed into the cab. He started the engine. The wheels spun instantly. Steel screamed on wet rail. The vehicle shuddered but did not move. Ruiz shouted over the engine, "It wants to be a truck again." Art shut it down. They added weight, more sandbags, more scrap rail. A crate of useless broken parts nobody had yet admitted were useless. Art tried again. This time the wheels slipped, caught. Then the Dodge moved, only a foot at first, then 10, then 50. No steering, no road spray, no mud, trying to climb the tires because the tires were gone. Only steel on steel, the flanges clicking lightly inside the rail heads. The little truck rolling into the green tunnel of jungle, as if the track had been waiting for it. Art drove a quarter-mile out and reversed back. Then he coupled 1 flat car with a chain, loaded it with artillery shells, and tried again. The Dodge pulled it, slowly, unattractively, but it pulled it. By sunrise, 1 converted weapons carrier had moved nearly 3 tons of ammunition across track no road vehicle could use. Private Ruiz stood on the embankment with his cap in his hand. He said, "They're either going to make you famous or shoot you." Art looked at the machine. Rain ran down the hood in crooked lines. "No," he said. "First they're going to make me explain it." He was right. By noon, Major Edmund Haskell had him standing in front of a folding table inside the battalion tent. Haskell was an engineer officer who believed in procedure with the intensity of a man who had watched bad improvisation kill good soldiers. He was not a fool. That made him harder to argue with. "You modified government property," Haskell said. "Yes, sir." "You used scrap allocated to 3 different sections." "Yes, sir." "You disabled the standard steering of a motor vehicle." "Yes, sir." You operated it on an uncleared railway known to be under enemy observation. Art did not answer quickly enough. Haskell looked up. That one was not a trick question. Yes, sir. Haskell folded his hands over the report. Corporal, if that thing derails with medical cargo, you do not have a transportation innovation. You have a pile of dead men and a written confession. Art could have defended the work. He could have talked about rolling resistance, traction coefficient, and ballast. Instead, he said the only thing that mattered. Sir, the last road convoy to the North Aid Station took 11 hours. 2 trucks broke axles. 1 never arrived. My rail run covered the same distance in under 1 hour with no mud loss. Haskell's face did not change. The difference, Art said, is not the truck. It's the ground. We keep asking wheels to beat Burma. The rails already did. For a moment, only rain spoke against the canvas. Haskell closed the folder. You are confined to the motor pool until I decide whether this is genius or stupidity. Art nodded. Yes, sir, and do not touch that vehicle. Art hesitated. Haskell's eyes narrowed. Art said, May I repair it? No. May I keep the rain off the wheel bearings? Haskell exhaled through his nose. That is not touching it. It is very close to touching it, sir. Haskell pointed to the door. Art left. By all normal routes, the rail mule should have died there. It was unauthorized. It was embarrassing. It did not fit the forms. It made officers responsible for a thing they had not ordered. But the army in Burma contained one more kind of person, the kind who read the numbers. Captain Miriam Vale was a logistics officer attached to the forward supply staff. She was 34, sharp-eyed, and disliked by officers who preferred their shortages described vaguely. Vague shortages could be explained away. Numbers could not. She noticed an irregular fuel entry before she ever saw the machine. One Dodge weapons carrier burning fuel during a period when no mission had been logged and no road movement was possible. She came to the motor pool at dusk with the ledger under her arm. Art assumed she was there to get him punished more efficiently. Instead, she asked, How much did it pull? He said 3 tons on one flat car. How far? Trial distance was short. How short? Short enough to keep me out of prison if the trial failed. She almost smiled. Then she asked the right question. What failed first? Traction, engine heat, coupling, or track? Art looked at her differently after that. Traction, he said. Then coupling. Engine was fine. Track held. Captain Vale nodded once. A colonel from theater logistics was due 2 mornings later. Vale could put the demonstration in front of him for exactly 15 minutes. No more. If it failed, Haskell would bury the project so deep no one would find the parts. If it works, she said, the paperwork will discover it was legal all along. Art looked past her at the rail line, disappearing into mist. And if it doesn't, then you will become an example. He spent the next 36 hours fixing everything he could see and worrying about everything he could not. They remachined the worst flange. Ruiz rebuilt the coupling with a proper pin instead of a chain knot. Samuels measured every spacer twice and made Art measure them again. Grant drilled weep holes so the wheel housings would not trap water. At 07, 2 mornings later, Colonel Franklin Ives arrived in a standard Jeep that had to be pushed the final 30 yards by 8 sweating men because the road had turned to soup. The rail mule was waiting on the track. Behind it sat 3 flat cars loaded with crates, ammunition, quinine, bandages, radio batteries, and 2 sealed medical chests nobody wanted to drop from an airplane. Total cargo weight was just under 9 tons. The colonel looked at the Dodge, then at Captain Vale, then at Major Haskell, then back at the Dodge. He said, "That is not a train." Art stood beside the cab. "No, sir." "Is it a truck?" "Not anymore, sir. I've stared at him." "Show me what it is." Art climbed in, eased the clutch out, and fed power slowly enough that the engine sounded patient. The wheels slipped once. The whole demonstration balanced on that sound. Then the flanges settled. The coupler tightened. The first flat car rolled. Then the second. Then the third. 9 tons of cargo began moving through the rain behind a truck that had no tires. No one spoke. At 50 yards, Art shifted into second. At the first curve, Haskell leaned forward involuntarily. The front wheels did not steer. The rail did. The vehicle followed the track, tight and clean, like it had been manufactured for that purpose, by a government that had somehow become reasonable. The rail mule disappeared into the jungle and returned 12 minutes later, cargo intact. Engine warm, but not boiling. No derailment. No mud loss. Art stopped the Dodge exactly where it had started. Colonel Ives checked his watch, then turned to Haskell. "How much can a truck move on that road today?" Haskell's jaw tightened. "Today? Nothing reliably, and this moved 9 tons. "Yes, sir." Ives looked at Captain Vale. "How many of these can we build?" Vale looked at Art. Art had already done the arithmetic. 8 in 2 weeks if I get men, scrap, and no one takes the late. Haskell said, "Sir, the regulatory issues." Ives cut him off. "Major, regulations are excellent at preserving order. They are poor at carrying morphine through mud." He turned back to Art. "You have 10 days for 6 machines. If they kill anyone, I will know your name for the wrong reason. If they work, so will everyone else." By nightfall, the first official order existed. It did not call them rail mules. It called them emergency rail-adapted light cargo tractors, because paperwork hates poetry. The men called them rail mules anyway. For 10 days, the motor pool became a factory built out of rain and theft. Torches hissed under tarps. Wheel blanks cooled in sand molds. Men slept beside the lathe, so no other section could claim it. Captain Vale found cargo priorities faster than the quartermaster could object. Haskell, to his credit, did not sabotage the work. He inspected it mercilessly, which turned out to be useful. By the end of the second week, 6 rail mules were operating on the Nambu Spur. In 12 days, they moved 180 tons of supplies north. Not theoretically, not projected, moved. Crates that had been stacked under tarps were opened at aid stations. Ammunition that had been counted by the clip arrived by the box. Quinine reached men whose fevers had been timed against hope. For the first time in months, the jungle did not decide everything. The Japanese noticed in 5 days. Their patrol reports changed tone first, then their artillery timing changed, then their sappers came back. A railway is efficient because it is fixed. That is also its weakness. Every bridge exists in one place. Every cutting through rock holds the same shadow every afternoon. Every siding appears on some old survey map if the enemy knows which office to steal from. On June 3, a demolition team blew the north trestle and dropped 40 yards of rail into floodwater. On June 5, a mine cracked the lead wheel housing on Mule 3 and threw the driver through the windshield frame. He survived with broken ribs and a face full of glass. The cargo did not arrive that day. On June 6, Haskell filed a suspension report. This time, no one could say he was only being stubborn. He had evidence. The program had grown too fast. Drivers had been trained in hours. Track reconnaissance was thin. Two-wheel collars were wearing unevenly. One bad derailment could block the line worse than the Japanese had. In the command tent, Haskell laid it out cleanly. "Colonel, this began as an emergency measure. It is becoming a habit. Habits kill men when engineering has not caught up." Captain Vale said, "Men are already dying because logistics has not caught up." Haskell looked at Art. "How long to correct the wheel collar issue?" 36 hours. "How long to bypass the trestle?" 3 nights. That made the tent go still. Art pointed to a map. "There's an old maintenance siding west of the main spur. It misses the trestle by 200 yards. The rail is buried under growth, but the bed is still high. We can lay panel track across the gap with no lights." Haskell shook his head. "Under enemy patrol movement?" "Yes, sir. And if they find you, then we stop being mechanics and start being infantry, which none of us are good at." Nobody laughed. Colonel Ives looked at the casualty numbers, then the supply numbers, then the rain soaking through the edge of the tent. "Fix the collars," he said. "Build the bypass. Full security detail. No daylight work." Haskell was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "If we do this, we do it properly." Art nodded. "That was always the idea, sir." For 3 nights, engineers worked in blacked-out silence. No lanterns unless hooded. No shouting. No smoking. Men laid rail panels by feel, passing bolts hand to hand like contraband. Leeches climbed their socks. Mosquitoes fed through shirts. Once, everyone froze for 9 full minutes, while a Japanese patrol moved somewhere beyond the bamboo, close enough that one man later swore he heard a canteen hit a rifle sling. By dawn on the 4th day, the bypass existed. It was ugly. It was temporary. It was enough. And on June 11, the rail mules made the run that turned the program from clever to necessary. A forward battalion holding the East Ridge had reached the edge of collapse. Their ammunition was below 40%. The aid station had 6 morphine syrettes left. The radio batteries were failing. Airdrops had lost too much to canopy drift, and the road approach sat under Japanese machine gun observation. At 0340, 4 rail mules lined up on the new bypass. No headlights, no shouted orders. Only hand signals, dim shapes, and the small metallic tension of couplers taking weight. Across the 4 consists 12 tons of cargo, rifle ammunition, mortar rounds, blood plasma, sulfa powder, quinine, radio batteries, food that was not already wet. Art drove the lead mule. Captain Vale rode the second flat car, not because she had to, but because she wanted to see whether the numbers had a sound when they moved. They did. At 15 miles per hour, a rail mule was not fast. But in that valley, in that rain, with every road broken or watched, 15 miles per hour felt like cheating death. The bypass held. The flanges clicked through the curve. The destroyed trestle sat 200 yards to the east, a black gap in the old line, exactly where the Japanese expected every Allied supply effort to fail. The rail mules passed it in the dark. At 04:26, the first flat car reached the forward unloading point. The men there did not cheer. Exhausted men rarely do. They stared. Then they moved like men who had remembered they were alive. Crates came off the cars. Medical chests went straight to the aid tent. Radio batteries were carried to the signal pit. Ammunition disappeared into foxholes before the rain could find it. A young lieutenant looked at the steel wheels under Art's Dodge and said, "Where did that come from?" Art wiped rain out of his eyes. "Altoona," he said. By 06, the ridge had what it needed. By 0815, The Japanese attack began. It had been timed against hunger, sickness, and shortage. It struck a line that should have been brittle. Instead, it hit a line with full magazines, working radios, and surgeons who could finally stop choosing which pain mattered most. The attack failed before noon. Not because the rail mules fought. They never fired a shot. They only made sure the men who had to fight were not abandoned by distance. That is the part most histories miss about logistics. It does not look like glory. It looks like boxes arriving. It looks like a battery that works when a message has to leave. It looks like a medic opening a crate and seeing what he prayed would be there. It looks like a mechanic covered in grease, standing beside a machine the manual would not recognize, trying to pretend he is not shaking. The rail mule program spread after that, not cleanly. Nothing in that theater spread cleanly, but it spread. Other engineer units copied the wheels, improved the collars, standardized the couplers, and added guard plates against small mines. Captain Vale wrote the first practical instruction sheet. Haskell rewrote it with more warnings and better dimensions. Art complained about the warnings, then admitted they were useful. By the end of the campaign season, 28 converted vehicles were operating on captured or abandoned narrow-gauge lines across the theater. Field logs credited them with moving more than 4,000 tons of cargo over routes that trucks could not use for weeks at a time. 7 forward positions received critical resupply by rail mule before their commanders expected relief. No one could calculate how many lives that meant with perfect honesty, but the medical officers tried. Their estimates ranged from 300 to 500 men who likely survived because blood, quinine, sulfa, or morphine arrived before the jungle made the decision for them. Art Blevins received a Bronze Star in a ceremony so small that 2 men standing 30 yards away thought it was a reprimand. He was wearing a shirt with one sleeve torn and had grease on his forearms. Colonel Ives said the citation out loud. Captain Vale stood behind him, exhausted and expressionless. Major Haskell shook Art's hand afterward. He did not apologize. He said, "Your flange depth was too shallow on the first set." Art looked at him. "Yes, sir." Haskell held his hand a second longer. Second set was better. From Major Haskell, that was a parade. When the war ended, the rail mules became a paperwork problem. They were not trucks anymore, but they had truck serial numbers. They were not locomotives, but they had pulled rail cargo. They were field modifications in a world suddenly trying to become orderly again. Most were scrapped. A few had their rubber wheels restored. At least one, according to a depot inventory, was shipped out with flanged wheels, still bolted on, because no one could find the original hubs and everyone wanted to go home. Art Blevins went back to Pennsylvania in 1946. He returned to the rail yards first, then to a machine shop that made pump parts, then to a small garage he opened with his brother. He married late. He did not tell the story often. When people asked about the medal, he said he had been lucky enough to work with good men. Captain Vale stayed in logistics and spent the next 20 years making supply systems harder to break. Haskell retired with an excellent record and a reputation for being impossible to fool. Colonel Ives told an Army historian years later that the rail mule was the best bad idea I ever authorized. Art never saw that interview. He died in 1983. In the drawer of his workbench, his daughter found a water-stained sketch of a flanged wheel, 4 spacer measurements, and one sentence written in pencil across the bottom of the page. Not impossible, just not built yet. That was the whole secret. The rail mule was never really about a truck. It was about a way of seeing. Most people saw a broken railway and a useless road vehicle. Art Blevins saw two incomplete halves of the same answer. The officers saw risk, and they were not wrong. The Japanese saw a fixed line and tried to cut it, and they were not wrong either. But Art saw the piece everyone else had left on the floor. He understood that sometimes the ground does not need to be conquered. Sometimes you stop arguing with the mud and find the strip of steel that already survived it. The jungle took the tracks back eventually. It always does. The ties rotted. The ballast sank. The rails rusted under vines thick enough to hide a war. But for one wet season, in one forgotten valley, a handful of mechanics put train wheels on trucks and moved a supply line through a place that had swallowed every official answer. The tires came off, the mission kept moving, and the mud, for once, lost.